You open a spit-in-a-tube DNA kit. You mail it off. 2 weeks later, a report tells you where your ancestors lived. It feels simple. It feels like your DNA is a neat little map of you. But the real answer is far stranger. Less than 2% of your DNA actually makes you human. Sit with that for a second. What is the other 98% doing? Some of it is old. Very old. Some of it is not even from a human at all. In 2010, a scientist named Svante Pääbo did something that sounded impossible. He pulled DNA out of a 40,000-year-old bone. It belonged to a Neanderthal. Pääbo and his team read the code, letter by letter, and compared it to yours. They found something strange. If your ancestors came from outside Africa, you likely carry Neanderthal DNA. Not a story. Not a myth. Real code still sitting inside your cells today. How much? Usually around 1 to 2%. That is enough to shape things. Some Neanderthal DNA affects your skin. Some affects how you respond to certain illnesses. Some even affects whether you are a morning person or a night person. Pääbo won the Nobel Prize in 2022 for this work. He proved that a species we once called primitive is still quietly living inside you. But Neanderthals are just one small piece of the puzzle. What about the rest? Back in 2003, the Human Genome Project finished its huge task. Led by scientists like Francis Collins, the project mapped every letter of human DNA. Everyone expected a treasure map. Instead, they found something humbling. Genes, the parts that actually build proteins and shape your body, made up only about 1 to 2% of the whole thing. Wait, only 2% builds you? Yes. For years, scientists called the rest junk DNA. Leftover code, broken instructions, old evolutionary trash your body forgot to throw out. It sounded like a fair guess at the time. Nobody could find a clear job for most of it, so they assumed it did nothing. That assumption did not last. A molecular biologist named John Maddock pushed back hard on the junk idea. He argued that non-coding DNA was not garbage, it was control. Think of your genes as light switches. Now think of the other 98% as the wiring behind the wall. The wiring decides when a switch turns on. It decides how bright the light gets. It decides which room even gets electricity in the first place. Maddox's research helped show that this hidden DNA quietly manages your genes. It turns them up. It turns them down. It decides which cells become a heart cell and which become a brain cell, even though every cell in your body carries the exact same DNA. Your liver and your eye are not different because they have different genes. They are different because different sections of the junk tell different genes to switch on. Doesn't that change how you see your own body? You are not just a pile of genes. You are a system of switches, timers, and instructions layered on top of instructions. Some of those instructions came from ancient humans who are no longer alive. Some came from something even older. Buried in your DNA are pieces of ancient viruses. Millions of years ago, viruses infected our distant ancestors. Some of that viral code got copied into reproductive cells. It got passed down generation after generation until it became a permanent part of you. Roughly 8% of human DNA traces back to ancient viral infections. You are, quite literally, carrying fossils of diseases your ancestors survived millions of years ago. That is not a flaw. That is a record. Your body kept a written history that no textbook ever wrote down. So if only a tiny fraction of your DNA is uniquely purely human, what does that make the rest of you? Maybe the question was wrong from the start. Maybe being human was never about having some pure, separate set of instructions. Maybe being human means being a living archive. A Neanderthal cousin lives quietly in your skin and your sleep schedule. A silent viral scar sits coiled in your genes. Millions of tiny genetic switches, most of them ancient, most of them invisible, decide who you become before you ever choose anything for yourself. Think about that the next time you look in the mirror. What you are looking at is not a clean, simple human blueprint. It is a scrapbook. Layer after layer, species after species, infection after infection, stitched together over millions of years into one working body that happens to be reading these words right now. There is one more twist. It sits right in the middle of you. You share about 98.8% of your DNA with chimpanzees. That number surprises most people the first time they hear it. Two creatures. One types out emails and pays taxes. The other swings through trees and eats buds off its friends. Yet the code inside both is almost the same. So what actually separates you from a chimpanzee? It is not a giant list of brand new genes. Scientists have looked. There is no secret human-only gene stash waiting to be found. The difference is smaller and stranger than that. It is mostly timing. It is mostly those tiny genetic switches again, turning certain genes on for longer, or earlier, or in slightly different places, during the 9 months you spent growing inside your mother. A brain gene that switches on for a few extra weeks in a human embryo can mean the difference between a chimpanzee skull and a human skull. That is the gap between you and your closest living relative. Does that feel unsettling? It should, a little. You are not built from a separate blueprint than the rest of the animal world. You are built from the same genetic material as everything else alive, just arranged with different timing. So here's where all these threads meet. Your Neanderthal cousin's DNA still shapes your skin and your sleep. Ancient viral code, copied millions of years ago, still sits coiled inside your genes. 98% of your DNA, once dismissed as junk, quietly runs the timing that made you a human instead of a chimpanzee. And the actual genes, the tiny 1 to 2% everyone assumed defined you, turn out to be the smallest part of the story. You are not one clean signature written by evolution. You are millions of years of edits, copies, infections, and switches, layered one on top of another. Next time someone tells you your genes make you who you are, you can offer a truer answer. Your genes barely make you who you are at all. Everything wrapped around them, inherited from creatures that no longer exist, quietly decides the rest. You mailed off that DNA kit expecting a simple map. What you actually carry is something stranger, older, and far more crowded than any map could ever show. Less than 2% of your DNA makes you human. The rest of you is history. Still alive, still running, still deciding who you are every single day.